Okay, so accelerationism, the belief that everything needs to be burned down, that nothing is worth saving. And I told you that the key change in the last several years is that this is more connected than it ever has been. Okay, it's not more disciplined. It's not necessarily bigger in raw numbers. Okay, but it is more connected. It's quickly mobilized now. It's well financed, more capable of spreading tactics and targets and narratives. Accelerationism. It's mainstream. And that changes the risk profile. The second fact of this, the line between protest and insurgent behavior is now being tested. I see up on the screen, Tom Homan is now speaking. I think he's in Minneapolis. This is the administration understanding perception versus reality, correcting it, telling Tom Homan, put the giant stick in your back pocket for a minute, walk in and get this thing done. And he did. And he's changing perception, but he's still holding the line and getting it done, okay? Protests are protected, even loud, offensive protests that make you furious, but not violent ones, not ones where you're attacking, okay? Now, let me add on to this a new set of facts, because for years we have told ourselves political violence was the danger, okay? Molotov cocktails, riots, burning down cities, broken windows, et cetera, And we've told ourselves that we can just stop the street chaos, the republic would be safe. That's a mistake. Because before violence really becomes common, something else has to happen first. Law has to be redefined. Not as a neutral constraint, but as a weapon to be aimed. And you're seeing it happen now. That's why you can't get people to be prosecuted in some states. They're using the law as a weapon. But it has gotten much worse than that. And you're hearing this, but I want to shape this here so you really hear what's going on. This week, a sitting member of Congress, Shri Thandar, he leaned forward in a hearing and he told a federal law enforcement official, "You better hope you get pardoned." Wow. That's a threat. He didn't say, you violated the law and you should be investigated. What he said was, when power changes hands, we're going to punish you for enforcing the law. That distinction is everything. The moment the enforcement itself becomes criminalized retroactively, the rule of law does not merely weaken, it completely flips. The message is no longer follow the law. The message becomes, guess who's going to be in charge later? You better act accordingly. That is not a democracy. That's a legitimacy war. And this is how accelerationism migrates from the streets into the state. Okay? It's no longer just mass protesters or, some sort of anarchist group with a bunch of slogans. It's the core belief that is simpler and far more dangerous. The institutions are irredeemably corrupt. Therefore, breaking these institutions is justified. In the streets, that always turns into burn it down. But inside the government, and you're beginning to hear it now, it starts to sound like, and we'll deal with you later. That is nothing I have ever heard ever in my lifetime in America. And it should chill all of us to the bone. When lawmakers openly promise prosecutions after elections, they're not talking about justice. They're signaling veto power, the rule by anticipation of punishment. Now, let's just say, let's call a spade a spade. Donald Trump said this. I'm going to put her in jail, lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. And everybody at that time took him seriously. And we told you, don't take him literally, take him seriously. He'll be a law and order guy, but he's not going to lock her up. Okay? Some people believed he would. He didn't. He didn't. They do believe it. Okay? You notice what follows because voices echo the same logic. Warnings that statutes of limitation are going to be used as countdown clocks. Public speculation about resurrecting prosecutions once political protection ends. You better be careful. You better hope. The casual talk now, and this is happening, of Nuremberg-style trials for domestic opponents. Nuremberg trials. Applause for the idea of prosecuting the former regime at every level, and anyone who was participating, that means you, that means me. Anybody who was on the side of the right, you better look out because when we get power. This is not about one person. This is not about left versus right. This is about something far more corrosive. The normalization of the idea that power exists to punish the previous holder of power. You're a banana republic. History is really clear, okay? In functioning republics, elections decide who governs. In failing republics, elections decide who gets immunity. Once that line is crossed, enforcement stops being about lawfulness and becomes about survival. Ask yourself what happens next. If you're a federal agent, do you enforce the law or do you hesitate? I mean, you have to calculate now who's in control of the DOJ in 3 years. I don't know what to do. This is what's happening. Listen to this. This is what is happening in Iran. As the regime is collapsing, everybody who is working with the regime, all the police now have to decide, am I going to enforce what the regime says, or am I going to do the opposite because a new regime is coming in? Some of them don't want to be killed themselves, but are brave enough to say, I'm not going to do that. But this is an actual state that is rounding people up and killing them. When you kill 35,000 people in 2 weeks, that's a state where you should be saying, you better watch out because when we get in, we will find you and there will be Nuremberg trials. Not this. Let me ask you, if you're a prosecutor, do you apply statutes evenly or do you quietly protect yourself from future retaliation? If you're a citizen, do you trust the investigations or do you now assume that every indictment is political theater and that's it? We're in the laboratory phase right now. There's no tanks, there's no coups, just hesitation. There's going to be growing fear and selective action. Once selective enforcement takes root, the street movements learn super fast. They already have. I'm not going to be prosecuted. I can burn this city down. I'm not going to be prosecuted. And then they begin to realize I don't need majority support. I don't even need persuasion. I only need to make enforcement so dangerous, legally, politically, reputationally, physically. I just need to make it so dangerous that if officers actually enforce the law, they risk getting killed by a mob in the streets. Or if prosecutors act, they risk career death and actual death. If judges rule, you're going to be delegitimized. So the enforcement slows down, then it fragments, then it becomes discretionary. Isn't our law really quite discretionary right now? You're not a country if you have discretionary laws. And when the law becomes optional, intimidation becomes rational. And this is how republics fall, in a quiet recalibration of fear. And at that point, violence doesn't need to be widespread. It only needs to be understandable. That is the most dangerous word in politics. Listen, have you heard this? Well, I don't like it, but I understand why they're doing it. Just make it understandable. Well, I don't support threats, but look at what the other side is doing. It's understandable. Well, this is what happens when institutions fail. It's understandable. Understandable is the permission slip. And history teaches that early phases, the one we're in right now, is the decisive one. No, they are in the streets. I can understand why they are angry, but that does not excuse them of this behavior, and they must pay the price. Okay? Right now, that's not what's being said. It's just understandable. And when prosecutions are still selective, but being promised, it begins to sound like a threat. When threats are still rhetorical, are they being normalized? Yes. And that's when recruitment accelerates. That's when copycats appear everywhere. That's when everyone starts preparing for the worst, and the preparation itself becomes the engine of collapse. This has to be dismantled. This has to stop. Because you're not going to get freedom. You're going to get fractional justice. And it's going to flip until, as I told you, we will swing so wildly back and forth until the real authoritarian steps up and says, this is going to stop. And they grab power. And when they grab power, they stop the vote from counting. We're there. Understand the SAVE Act? You're going to get cycles of revenge dressed up as accountability. You're going to get bureaucrats who answer not to the law, but to future protection. You get citizens that withdraw because speaking the truth is too dangerous. Silence is much easier and much safer. Just go along to get along. Don't say anything. And eventually, you get a country where elections no longer settle disputes. They just decide who gets prosecuted next. That's not America. And I don't think that's an America that the people I know who vote differently than me, that they want that either. But it will be America if we keep pretending that this is normal. It is not normal. The antidote is not rage. It's not denial either. It's not cheering when your enemies are threatened. The antidote is one standard applied to everyone in daylight. No retroactive criminalization of lawful enforcement. No moral licensing for intimidation. No euphemisms when power is being wielded through fear. Because the only thing stronger than anger on the street, stronger than an activist mob, stronger than politicized bureaucracy, is a public that believes the law is still real. I believe it's still real. Fight for that, America. Wake up and don't let others slumber. The republic is indeed at stake.